Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 20th episode of the Let's Ask Expert initiative, an event that is brought to you by the soft skills stream of the Global BE community. My name is JoAnn Mazurek, and I will, as always, have the pleasure to be your host of the event today. And a couple of words about the initiative itself, because we are celebrating the annual 20th episode. Around 2 years ago, I actually came up with this initiative just to counteract all of my LinkedIn feeds and LinkedIn posts about AI being absolutely everywhere. And I thought if AI is everywhere in the center, there needs to be the other side of the coin as well. And I thought that where AI is a useful and helpful tool, we still need to remember that it is the people who are using this tool. And behind every project and behind every delivery that we are doing, there are people working there. So that's why I wanted to put a bit more emphasis on a bit more human-centric approach. And that's how the initiative of Let's Ask Expert happened. Now, over the course of 20 episodes, we always were selecting the topics around various different soft skills, and it is you, our audience, who is watching us live, that will be able to help us select the topic for the next episode. So that's why at the end of last episode, when we had the voting for episode 20, majority of you has actually selected the topic of compassion. And like I've mentioned, while IT is in general associated with logic, efficiency, innovation, then there are people behind every of those activities: developers, testers, users. Each of them brings their own human experience into the equation, into this digital space. And that's why today our discussion will shape around how empathy, how this human-centered approach thinking can help improve the workspace culture and help improve also the technology that we create. So with that said, we have a great panel of experts today. So let me start introducing them, with the first one being JoAnn. So JoAnn, can you please introduce yourself to our audience, tell a couple of words about yourself so that people will have the opportunity to get to know you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jan. And thank you for having me on this Let's Ask an Expert. I did attend the last one and it was very enlightening and I did take away a lot of learnings. So thank you for that. So hello, everybody. I'm JoAnn DSouza. I am the Director, Head of People for EPAM Canada. I put 20 plus because I really don't want people to guess my age, but I have actually been in HR for 20 plus years, worked in various different industries, public and private sector. And I have been handling the whole employee life cycle, whether it's designing programs. I know HR says it, policies as well. Nobody likes the word, but we do have those. And also building cultures. Everything that we do and I do is to help drive our business results and business success through our people. I am a self-proclaimed HR geek. For some reason, my mom thought, hey, you should have gone into employment law because I love reading about cases and law and really learning about international HR as well. I am a proud boomerang EPAMer. So if you don't know what that is, I did leave EPAM. I admitted to my mistakes and I did come back and I was welcomed with open arms. So really glad to be here as well.
So this is something that actually we have in common, because I did the same mistake in my career in the past, that after 3.5 years, I decided to see if the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Turns out it's not.
Yeah.
So then I decided to come back. I managed to survive 5 months without EPAM. I don't know, what about yourself?
I made it 7 months. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not good at gardening or mowing the lawn. I am out of here. And then I came back to EPAM.
Nice, nice. So glad that you are here with us today. We also have joining us as a second expert, we have also Szymon Kiermasz. So Szymon, welcome to our today's session. Could you also introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you for the invitation and opportunity to be here and talk to all the folks gathered here. Well, it's I'm quite old as well. Not sure how to frame it, but I entered the market in 2007, so it's been a while. But yeah, that date also marks the tough start and let's say different types of organization. I've started my career with organizations where it was either go up or go out, right? So different kind of shaping of mentality and approach to work, but also it provided an insight to that human factor, where it is and how it needs to survive in even the most difficult organizations. I've been always focused on helping to have my teammates, the folks that I care about, and they're in my custody, let's say, to help them grow. And I've been successful in that regard, and I hope that I can share some of the experiences here.
Awesome. Glad to have you here with us. And last but not least, we also have Ted. So Ted, also glad to have you in our session. Could you also introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hi, my name's Ted Weil. I head up marketing for Test.io, and then sort of by extension, the testing practice. I've been in marketing for almost 30 years. Wow. Okay. Almost 30 years. Yeah, I know, right? Oof. Mostly with startups. So EPAM is by far the largest company I've ever worked for, and is definitely the most traditional corporate structure. And definitely in like the startup space, since you have a smaller number of people all crammed in together into smaller spaces and high pressure environments, compassion, it was often the only thing that kept us functional. So I think this is a great topic. I'm based in the U.S. state of Rhode Island, right on the Rhode Island-Massachusetts border. I'm about 40 minutes south of the city of Boston. And I'm a lifelong musician, much like our noble host, JoAnn. I play bass, guitar, and trombone.
Brother in bass, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Maybe one day we'll have an opportunity to jam. I will take my saxophone, you will take your trombone, but we'll then need to find someone who will take the bass from us.
Awesome.
But with that said, let us kick off our today's session. So as always, I'm stopping sharing the screen, and we'll have more in-person experience talking about today's topic. And actually, the first question which I have for you is, each and every one of us come from a different background and have different working experience, but we are all here grouped today by this topic of compassion. That's why the question which I have for you, with which I would like to start this conversation, is what does compassion mean in the context of your profession and your day-to-day activities? So maybe Ted, as you were the last one to introduce yourself, maybe let's start with you to firstly answer this question.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. Just don't be a jerk. You know, I mean, everybody in the world is, I mean, we always interacting, everybody's a human being who we interact with. Everybody's got their stresses, their pressures, their in-work worries, their out-of-work worries, their strengths, weaknesses, everything, right? And we're all just like one another, you know, at the end of the day, at least in regards to sort of our shared humanity. So for me, yeah, just don't be a jerk. And it's amazing how much sort of falls into place if one just sort of pursues that mentality.
There's also this nice quote from Robin Williams on this, that everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. So be kind always, right? It's just, you know, doesn't take that much of an effort. Szymon, your definition and your involvement in day-to-day activities for compassion.
So I like the framing that Ted had. I deconstructed it a little bit into the two elements of it, right? Compassion is, for me, it's an element that derives from both ability to be empathic, but also ability to build trust between people in the same team, organization, and so on. These two factors allow you to be compassionate and get to understand other people's need, and at the same time that gives the good oil to have the machine running. That's kind of good cooperation, understanding of itself, and you know, not pulling someone's arms when someone gives you heart, right?
Mm-hmm. And JoAnn, I think you will have the most difficult part because already two answers were provided. So how to expand on that?
Actually, you know, working in tech, you know what I did? I went to AI, and I'm like, what is compassion? Because I assume that or everybody else, you work in HR, JoAnn, you should have compassion because you deal with people. And I said, yeah, no, of course I did. So I went to AI and I said, what is compassion? What's interesting came up is I think sometimes we mistake compassion with empathy. And I think there's two distinguishing factors here. Compassion is, recognizing what somebody's going through, maybe emotionally, or maybe they've got some troubles, and then actioning or solutioning. Empathy is understanding maybe what that person's going through, but maybe not extending those solutions and really empathizing with maybe what they're going through. And I actually really thought about this last night because I'm like, ooh, maybe I am compassionate and I need a little bit more empathy, because what happens is in tech, in HR, you're dealing with fires, you're dealing with people's concerns, you're dealing with people's emotions because they come to you when they're at their end and they need that help. And what I tend to do is I listen, but then I'm like, okay, this is what you need to do. We need to solution this. And it often sometimes is not maybe what that person's looking for. Maybe they just want somebody to listen to them and empathize with them. So for me, it's having the compassion, distinguishing if that person needs some solution, but then also having the empathy side. And it is every day, right? So 10 hours a day, I'm dealing with people. And that's what I do and have done for 20 plus years.
So now this is a very, very interesting thing that you touched on, that some people want just to be listened, and some people just want to immediately rush to the rescue. And like if you tell me your problem, my initial instinct is to fix you. Like, how do you? And this is again a question to all of you. How do you distinguish one from another? How to make that understanding where to apply which solution and where to apply which approach to the person? So JoAnn, maybe let's start with you.
I'll keep going then, if you're going to give me the mic. Me personally, I don't know whether it's just culture or my DNA makeup, but the minute somebody comes to me with they have a problem or issue, I'm like, oh, I want to fix the problem for you. So it actually takes practice from me. And I've got like a little Post-it note on my screen that says, listen. And at the end of the day, you have to just listen to that person. And then the next thing I do is, do you need me to help solution something for you, or am I an ear for you today? And giving them that choice. So if they say, JoAnn, I need your solutions, great. Then I get all excited and I'm like, we should do this and this, and there's a whole bunch of actions and such. But if they just want to listen, you need to just stop and give them what they need.
Ted, your approach on this?
No, I think that's exactly it. I mean, and those of us who have been in relationships, I can certainly attest that, there are sometimes my wife just wants me to be empathetic. She just needs to vent. She just needs to kind of bleed off the emotions before she can even think about getting to problem solving, because there's just too much she's feeling before, can even get to sort of any kind of structured thing. And, a common mistake I make, but am constantly trying to get better at, is to not immediately fall into problem solving. So I really like the way JoAnn kind of delineated compassion versus empathy. And in truth, like the whole thing can be packaged, I think, in compassion, trying to better understand where you apply what, and the idea of giving the person a choice for what they want from you in terms of response, I think is also sort of a key compassion driver, because it lets them know that they're more important and what they have to say is more important than your ability to kind of puzzle solve for them. So,
but I think also sometimes verbalizing our thoughts or our worries kind of can help us already find the solution by ourselves. Right? It's kind of like this, rubber duck debugging. That if you talk to the rubber duck, the issue that you're facing with, maybe already, you will come up with the solution by yourself. So even we don't need to then engage with finding the solutions to the problems.
Right.
Szymon, how does it work for you?
It's very similar, with one maybe caveat in the angle of how it happens in my practice. Let's say the empathy is the key, to open the door to being compassionate and to the act of compassion themselves. The part is that you can be empathetic, you can observe things and so on, but why I mentioned the trust, because if you don't build the trust between the people, they'll not really share the full extent of what they think about something. And you can observe they're unwell and so on, but they need to trust you that they can share it with you, and then you can together then solutionize something, or even listen to them. And during that chat, you can drop hints, maybe give some options to consider, and then during that discussion, they can find their own solution at that stage. You don't need to even sometimes act, other than just listen and figure out, maybe consider this, maybe consider that, or just listen, depending on what they need at the moment.
There was this very cool training that we had at EPAM called Manager as a Coach. That, like, you don't provide the solutions itself, you just ask follow-up questions that maybe the person dealing with a certain situation was unable to come up with. But do you think that compassion in an IT environment, when there are tight deadlines and we need to focus on efficiency, and now with introduction of AI, we need to be twice as more productive, do you think that there is still space for compassion in this type of environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible to, I guess like a sort of accelerate compassion, to kind of go back to my initial sort of thesis of just don't be a jerk. Like, to a degree, maybe where it can become sort of difficult is like if we're in the role to express compassion or empathy, I do think it's a good idea to marry those two and kind of speak about them as a whole. But the pace isn't ours at the end of the day, right? It's the person with whatever struggle or challenge, and they will need whatever space or time that they need to work through the emotions, to get to the problem solving, to get to a point where they feel, okay, I've got a resolution, I can move forward and I feel better. But I do think when you're sort of on the other side of that, like to your manager as coach, I think that that's a great opportunity to kind of try to sort of accelerate the pace to a degree through that sort of Socratic method, where you focus on, what are sort of like the key questions I could ask to help them kind of build some bridges, maybe a little quicker than just kind of letting them sit there and wheel spin. So, and I think honestly, it's also being comfortable. And I know, client deadlines are client deadlines, and we only have so much control over this. But where we can afford time and space, even if maybe we don't want to, I think it's important to take that breath and kind of take advantage of that opportunity. Because like, it's not always going to be there, and it's fine to recognize that, I think, and work with that as you can. But when you can take even a little bit more time to kind of help the person digest, express, articulate, it's important to kind of carve that space out for them.
JoAnn, how do you carve that space for them if, on a busy day when you work 12 hours with people?
I have my own techniques, quite honestly. And you've all heard about, putting on your own oxygen mask. I think sometimes we need to put on our own compassionate oxygen mask, because at the end of the day, you need to have compassion for yourself and take that time, because you're going to be there for others, right? So in my profession, we're here for people, we're here for leaders, we're here for the business. And at the end of the day, I know this may be shock and awe, but HR doesn't have HR. So I know, right? It's an awkward topic, maybe for another day, but certainly, I need to practice my own self-awareness. I have little things that I do maybe at the beginning of the day where I'm like, how am I feeling today? And have that self-awareness. And do I need an extra cup of coffee? Or do I need to take some breathing techniques before I jump in? Because I need to be okay with myself in order to help others. And I think it's important for all of us at the speed of what we move in our industry to start practicing these little moments where we can do it. But also, I think it's IT. We move fast. So how do you carve out those moments for yourself? Maybe it's a 25-minute meeting versus a 30-minute meeting, and having that 5 minutes just to breathe through it and regain your energy levels. Because you never want to go from meeting to meeting losing that compassion, and that poor person that's at 4 p.m. on a Friday that's asking to meet with me, you're like, I can't do it today. Like, and then of course, personally, what you should probably do is, what do you do after hours? Do you work out in the morning? Do you play bass guitar and have dance battles with Ted? Ted, I'm looking forward to that dance battle. But, making sure you are taking care of yourself is so important so you can move at the speed and deliver to others who need that compassion from you.
I think some people have also the necessity, or sometimes just, I don't know whether it's a self-defense mechanism, that they run away from their own problems towards the problem of other people. Kind of like, like I will not think about, like, mine is not important at the moment. There are other people who require my assistance, and of course, I will be there to save the world. But I don't know. With Szymon, we have a quite similar experience because we became parents like week or 2 weeks between, like there was a 2 week gap between ourselves. Our sons are just 2 weeks apart. And I think that for me changed everything because now I need to be there for someone, right? So Szymon, did you have that same thought and the same experience that you suddenly now need to put your attention and focus elsewhere?
There's definitely that, and it's a challenge on its own, especially with a small kid. Like, you won't explain that daddy is working in late hours and sitting at the computer. I had sometimes calls and meetings when he was sitting on my lap and just looking at the people on the screen, and that was then compassion given by the audience that of those meetings. Like, they understood the situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was something I was really valued in those relationships with either teams or clients directly. Like, they understood that and they were allowing that. So compassion goes both ways. If you receive that as well, that fuels that potential in you to give that compassion. You also mentioned that the question about the pace, the differentiation of AI and all that pacing technology, and do we find room? I think that it's critical that we actually are compassionate to our colleagues at work, and not only at work, but also to our companions on the client side. That the pace in technology is extreme. It's never been this fast, right? And people will find hard time to adapt to a lot of these things. And you need to be there to them. Sometimes the whole change, like if you miss half a year or you've been on maternity leave or something, this is a whole new world for you when you are back. And people are afraid, scared how to move forward and so on. Trying to like emphasizing that, like being empathic. I mean, to them, understanding that kind of position. It gives you ability to, okay, I know where I am, I know what I can do, I've been through various phases, I'm, let's say, competent at this technology and so on. How can I make all these changes and all that pace less scary to those people, like breaking down into smaller pieces so they can get a grip and get confidence in whatever they're doing, because once they start getting confidence, then your next steps are easier and easier. And finding that time, again, something that I use from the past experiences in consulting, like even if I don't have time right now, right, I connect, put some one-liner, let me come back to you, something like that. Like you would build a regular relationship with a client or someone, and then even if you know that you don't have time this week, but you see the person green and you have like, I don't know, 3 times to the next meeting, call them briefly. Okay, you want to talk about it? I don't really have time, but I hear you. Let's set up something. Look at my calendar in this time frame. Like you find something, give them that opportunity to be an agent in their own case, and then if you agreed to something, you need to be there when you agreed on something, right? And that's how you build also this trust level.
Yeah, but you and I, we are working on projects. We know that sometimes, those deadlines, really customers are pushing strong on that. And I think this kind of requires from us, the leaders, the managers, the ability to have the back of our team members, unit members, that, if they will come to us with a problem that, I'm facing a challenging time in my life, I need some space on the project, to, I don't know, reach out to the delivery manager, speak up, or even encourage them to speak up, to build a working culture and working environment when people are not afraid actually to be able to speak up about the issues, rather than just thinking that, oh, I need to do 12 hours a day every single day and give 150% of my performance.
So to add to that, I think this will be last sentences. It provide people like this layer and understanding that give them the agency in their own fate, like help them build that agency. Once they have this agency assisted by you, they'll develop their own agency, and like they'll be growing and getting more experience and more confident in their actions as well. And that will build also resilience on any future, let's say, obstacles.
Now, we talk about compassion, we talk about, listening or giving this helpful advice, but sometimes we are also overburdened by our daily activities and our daily routines. And like JoAnn, you mentioned, HR doesn't have an HR. So what could be some ways to not to take too much upon yourself and put yourself in like this healthy assertiveness, this healthy way of putting the boundaries? And can you give some advice to our audience what to do not to feel overwhelmed and overburdened, not only by your events of your daily life, but also those people who require your help? So JoAnn, what would be your...
I'm going to be divulging all my secrets here, but I want to start off with what Ted said. Don't be a jerk, right? I think being open, honest, and transparent is key. There are going to be days where I'm looking at numbers, I'm looking at budgets, and I'm just not in the frame of mind to give my full compassionate self. And the one thing I do with my own team is be open about it and just say, you know what, team, I've had a heck of a day. So can we maybe defer this meeting to maybe later on this afternoon? What does your calendar look like? But recognizing in yourself and being open and vulnerable to say how your frame of mind is doing. And then, but giving them that space to say, can we talk about this later? Or, this is a very heavy topic right now. I think we need a part 2 to this. And it's okay to do that. I think as leaders, we feel like we need to be these superheroes that handle everything, and we have this bulletproof shield where we are not vulnerable or don't have the same emotions. And I think showing that vulnerability makes you real. And the person that needs your compassion will see that as well, and hopefully are not jerks, and see that. And then there's that human interaction and compassion that goes both ways.
Ted?
I do like it. Don't be a jerk. I'm going to reschedule this meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I do think a big core of being a successful, compassionate, wow, and I love JoAnn's calling out the need to establish boundaries still for ourselves. Humility I think, is the root of everything good: compassionate, empathy, all of it. But at the same time, I think that it's okay to practice active listening and validation while also fairly managing expectations, just so you can help keep yourself sane. Sort of the I hear you and I see you. That doesn't mean I may agree with you, but it means you are not going to be dismissed or ignored. So this way, you can sort of just set up sort of not barriers so much, but maybe just sort of expectations that, I'm here and I'm listening and you matter to me, but I matter to me too. And so, if I have a stance, if I have a perspective or something that I think will ultimately help you, even maybe if it's not something you want to hear, but it is the bridge you kind of need to get over this initial gap and get back to your own pursuit of whatever better translates into for you. I think it is okay to, again, sort of plant the flag that, yeah, I'm a human being too. And, and I'm going to interact with you as fellow human beings. In return, please respect me as a human as well.
Mm-hmm. And again, the theme of today's episode: don't be a jerk. Szymon, what would you do not to be overburdened by those people?
There are a couple things, but one that might be particular to some of the experiences I've been shared by. Sometimes you just need a space or a person, most likely a person, to whom you can just vent all those things, so you can reset your mind, right? So, like psychiatrists also, and the people in psychology, they listen to a lot of people themselves, and they have this mechanism that they also have their own someone to whom they can tell everything. So usually having one or two people who you can build that kind of, they will listen to you, even if they'll just listen. You can talk, discuss, reset your mind, and be done with it, right? And then again, get that composure, get your boundaries up, like JoAnn mentioned. You need to have those. You need to protect yourself, because if you do not protect yourself, you don't have capacity to protect others, right? So that's the case.
I would say that also kind of depends slightly on the magnitude of the situation, because I remember from my own experience when I was still a line manager many years ago, there was one situation in which one of my unit member told me that her parent passed away. And at that particular point, like, I don't care how many critical defects there are in production and how many meetings with the customers I have scheduled. Like, there is this moment that requires my attention here and now to drop everything and just to show that the world didn't stop here and there for the person, just to show that there is still some things worth getting up in the morning to, right? And just reach out to, I don't know, delivery manager, to account manager, to say maybe there will be a decrease of performance of this person or something. Just give a bit of safe space, right? So sometimes just if someone will I don't know, want to be upset with me for doing that, I think, okay, fine, but take in that case that hit upon ourselves sometimes. I don't know whether you would agree with this approach or not, because maybe, again, all of you mentioned we need to care for ourselves first. But I think it really depends on the situation, and it depends on the magnitude of issue we are dealing with. So it would be interesting to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, and 100%. And I'm going to give you the HR answer. It depends.
Mm-hmm. It's also the PA answer very often.
Right. Somebody comes to you, the question, you're like, it depends. And I think that's an important distinction, because it depends on the situation, right? It depends on the person. I think absolutely, there are those life events that, take precedence in somebody's life over, hey, I need to attend this meeting, or I need to attend this stand-up. And I think as leaders, or leaders of people, or working with others, we need to have that as well, right? If you have an employee that's coming to you with something that's happened in their life, the first thing you say is, what do you need from me? Let me go and push meetings, take the time, be with it. There's emergencies, life happens, and we need to balance that. And how do we help that person? Here I am, compassionate and solutioning. How do we help them at work so they can deal with what they're going through in that moment? So absolutely, it depends. And I think you really need to get to the heart of the act of listening and really what that person is needing from you in that moment.
This is actually something with Szymon. We have a common friend, and a big shout out to Ella here, because she taught me one important thing, that there is a huge difference between saying, "Don't worry, everything will be fine," and saying, "I'm here for you," right? Because this is something that really stick with me, to say that, okay, like JoAnn, like we mentioned, what I can do for you, like not try to fix everything, but just even like, I cannot make things better, but I can make you a tea, or I can lend an ear, or just divide time, or divide company, right? And that's something that might help.
In my personal life, with families, I go into project management mode. Like, how do we do this? And I want to fix this. And how do we solution this? And maybe it's because I work in IT, somehow that it is embedded in me. And it's interesting. So what I've practiced with my family and my partner is, they'll be telling me something, and then before I go into it, I'm like, are you venting? Or do you need me to solution and project manage you? And just stopping for that moment, they're like, I just need to vent. I'm like, okay. It takes some practice, but certainly, making sure you have that circle in your personal life as well, with either friends, families, to ask those questions, but also keep you honest.
Sure.
Make sure that they're telling you, hey, I need your project management skills right now, JoAnn, like let's go. And I think that's important, not only at work, but also in your personal life. And I go back to, Ted, I've had those conversations at home too. And my partner's like, I don't need you to solution. Like, I just need to vent. And I'm like, sorry.
Yeah. And talking about project management, introducing Trello board when doing renovation of the kitchen, not a good idea. That's where my wife drew the line, and she said, no, too much. No. So Excel spreadsheets for reporting, yeah, still acceptable, but Trello board, too much. Szymon, what about yourself?
That's the case. Well,
you're also a line manager, right? And you are also, so some people will come to you and they will tell, well, I'm having a worse day, and
yes, and I'm waiting. Normally, I would try to wait and give you corporate polite answer, but I'll be blunt in here. Projects should be treated the same as companies have BCP plans, right? For anything that's unexpected, catastrophe, war, and things like that. Projects should assume for emergencies that there might be something unexpected happening. You might get hit by a car and someone will not arrive to the project space, right? That's something like that. Someone just can't hand you the resignation letter, and there it is, right? So you need to have the same kind of mentality that this kind of event. If someone needs their space, there's an emergency happening in their life, the world doesn't end. You need to adapt. You need to be prepared for this kind of level of project and business ambiguity as a project leader. And for people then will value that kind of support and will be more engaged given the opportunities that you provide to them, by being compassionate and understanding in the moments that are really important to them.
Ted, specific question in regards to marketing. Does compassion help in reaching out to wider maybe audience or customers, or to advertise certain things? Do you find it as a useful skill?
It's critical, right? Because I guess at sort of the end of the day, you could sort of define marketing as like connecting human psychology to business goals, right? Figuring out who do I want to talk to? How do they want to be spoken to? How can we best communicate that we see them, we understand them? Because, and this is true for, I think, for most tech companies, and it's been true across my entire career. Tech companies often, and certainly here at EPAM too, often fall into like this outside or inside out way of thinking, right? Here's what I think is important. Here's what I want to talk about. Here's what I care about. And so I'm going to give that to you to sort of figure out, when in truth, it should be more of that outside in perspective where, who are you? What do you want to hear? What are you interested in? What do you care about? What are your biggest worries and anxieties that you're coming to me to try to help resolve? And so, being able to be compassionate and then certainly empathetic, because sometimes your audience does just want to vent. But by and large, they're looking to you for problem solving and solutioning, but they want to know that they're an actual face, like they're an actual entity, that you recognize them as a person and their organization, and they want to succeed because they want the people around them to succeed, because they want to keep being able to take care of themselves and their families, and and all of that, and then their customers. In marketing, that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, is figuring out how to package all of that up and reflect it in that outside in perspective. So
there's something interesting. A friend of mine told me some years ago, whenever she is starting a project, she doesn't introduce herself as a business analyst saying, I will be responsible for requirements, but she says, I'm for example, business analyst, and for the next 6 months, I will be your best friend. Or, I'm here to change your life for better. And it's kind of like already a nice sentence that kind of helps bridge that gap, build that connection. And people were like, okay, interesting. So tell me, how do you want to achieve that, right? And now that's kind of help to put conversation already on the right tracks. So I don't know, Szymon, whether you as a BA, whether you have those kind of tricks that can help build that connection with the customers in a compassionate way.
Definitely listening to them first, right? That's the case. And like Ted mentioned, this outside-in perspective, like figuring out what they're facing, what their goals are, what the goals of their managers are, right? Because things do not happen in isolation. So you need to understand like about themselves and about the environment they're in, and then you can extend that hand. Hey, I can help you achieve this. We are partners in doing this. Let's go through that together. Let's solutionize. Let's figure out this out. How can I help you with with making your objectives reality, right?
Sure, but how in that case perceive or how to address the fact that some people might identify compassion as weakness? That if you're compassionate, you're weak, and you will always be submissive to the needs of other people, right? JoAnn, I see you smiling, so I think.
Yeah, no. If you don't mind, I'm going to jump in. It's interesting because compassion is sometimes associated with like emotions. And then as an extension, emotions in the workplace. For decades and decades, emotions in the workplace are seen as taboo, is seen as a weakness. And there's been a shift in the workforce where you're going to see people that want more compassion, that want more empathy in the workplace, that want to be heard. And there's this, we should be doing that. We should be moving to that type of culture. But there's still this, if you get very upset or you're sad at work or you show emotion, it's weakness. And it's not. And we as individuals need to make those, little changes within ourselves and our teams and the people around us. Having these panel discussions is an amazing journey and start for some organizations, but this is where we need to be open about, hey, emotions are not weakness. We can still conduct business. We can still be profitable. In fact, we'll build a culture that will help build and realize that strategy. And that culture is showing compassion, showing empathy. If I may be so bold, hopefully you've all read Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. If you haven't,
smart.
100%. It's a really quick read. It's really good. But having those virtues, humility, I think Ted also mentioned humility, people smarts, having those things and those emotions will really help an organization thrive because people will feel like they can bring their true selves. They can bring their emotions because let's be clear, we have lives outside of work. And sometimes, some days, I do schedule it in some days. It's in my calendar, personal life. But certainly, we bring all that in. We bring in what's happening around the world and how it's impacting people and those are okay, right? So accepting it, helping each other through it is really going to help any organization with their talent. And I'm going HR on you all. But that's where employees are going to feel comfortable and want to bring their true selves is where they feel that they have a comfortable space to bring those emotions, bring compassion. And I'm going to step off my HR pedestal and hand the mic over because I could talk all day about culture.
I was just wanted to comment on this because I am a follower of the man by the name of Masood Bumgard, who also goes by the acronym of Self-Help Sing, and he's just recording like those reels about Friday afternoon meetings, about work-life balance. Maybe you saw this person from India with this very relaxing, chill music, talking about things that maybe not necessarily very culturally appropriate. But he mentions that if your manager is telling something that makes you feel uncomfortable and you want to cry, then start crying and make him feel uncomfortable as well, right? And just at the end of the day, we are still people, so maybe that's also an interesting way to look at this.
I think it's also okay. I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think it's also okay to be accepting that, some people are just going to be jerks and like we only have control over ourselves, right? And here in the US, and she passed away a few years ago, but just an absolutely brilliant author, poet, and civil rights activist, Maya Angelou. And she's got this great quote, when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. And it's learning how to be content that, I can only control myself and I can only make choices for me. And so the choice to be compassionate and reflect and express that, however, needs to be reflected in the context, that's my choice to make. And I'm the one responsible for making that choice. Everybody else has the same opportunities to make the same choices. If they make different choices, okay, I got no control over that. But at the same time, once I'm done with that interaction, I'm happy to go off and hang out with other people and limit my interactions as best as I can with them. Or, when I do have to intersect, all right, I'm just going to give you yes, no answers, get on with my day, which isn't the kind of relationships I like to cultivate. I don't like transactional relationships. I like working with people as people. But if you have somebody who does see compassion as a weakness, and for those of you who have been monitoring what's been going on here in the US politically, about half of our country sees compassion as a weakness. And there's not much we can do about it, but just try to push back and sort of try to amplify our own radical compassion to try to, I don't know, maybe drown it out is the sort of best way, and to JoAnn's point about trying to foster a community and a culture of compassion. If you can be louder than the jerks, And the people who are on the receiving end of sort of both those styles of interaction get to choose which one they prefer. You can win over hearts and minds just by being a good, nice, compassionate person. And then that can shift the needle decisively back to more of a compassionate culture where, I mean, there will always be the people who see compassion as a weakness. And we all know it's really rooted in their own insecurities, their own pain, their own whatever. But, you know, the best any of us can do is show them compassion to some degree without leaving ourselves vulnerable, you know, keeping up our boundaries like JoAnn was talking about, and then just leaving them be. And they'll tell you who they are. If they go on their own journey and they are able to embrace compassion and they tell you that, fantastic. I will welcome them with open arms, no judgment. But if they really want to stay on that path of compassion as a weakness, okay, man, that's your choice, buddy. I'm going to go hang out and work with other people. So
this is actually very interesting that it takes the same amount of effort to be a jerk and the same amount of effort to be a kind person. Right? So why not to use that energy to something positive? Right?
Well, I mean, again, to jump back to something else JoAnn was talking about, because when you're compassionate, to be compassionate, you have to leave yourself vulnerable. And many people find that very scary. You know, it spikes their own anxiety, which I can completely get. And so, you know, I liked how she spoke to the need to foster compassion by effectively creating safe spaces where people can feel comfortable to be themselves, that mistakes that they make, they're not going to be hit over the head with, that everybody's there just to kind of help all ships rise. So yeah, people are complicated, and I think, you know, and you know, and you know, it's good to recognize that for some people, compassion is a very scary thing, even though, you know, I think it almost takes less energy to be compassionate because you're then sort of sharing the, I don't want to call it the burden, but maybe the energy requirement with the other person because you're working together, right? Where if you see compassion as a weakness, you're setting up an adversarial me versus you, one of us has to win sort of thing. And so you kind of end up having to own all the energy and the effort. So yeah, you know, I think for some people being compassionate is just scary. So
Szymon, do you as a line manager preach compassion to your unit members, or do you expose compassion when having one-to-ones with them?
I would not say I preach. I'm not a preacher.
Preacher.
I'm more like a
Coach.
a doer and coach. Yeah. So I'm the kind of interactions that I try to foster is like to get people to understand that I'm there for you, like, right, to listen, to assist, and so on.
I'll be
but
there for you.
but also, you know, there's a certain contract attached to that. If you break that contract, okay, let's say once, I have a rule of 3 basically, right? So once can happen through what's going on 3, okay, that's too many, right? And then we move to more transactional type of environment, right? Because apparently you don't value the compassion and the empathy that I'm giving and what the effort that I'm putting into fostering a good environment for you, right? So there's that kind of approach that the level of you need to set the boundary, that the kind of contract for when you can be compassionate and when you should drop that and be more transactional and effective, and not effective, but as in more how to call it,
more compassionate.
more goal oriented, let's say, right? To put it mildly, and yeah, that's the way that I've been going through a lot of organizations and different stages of organizations, and it's been very difficult at the beginning, especially in crisis time, because people, when in those highly competitive environments, they will often use that as a weakness, right?
Mhm.
And in others, I prefer the others. Let's say the other environment where you actually can have this collaborative environment where people can be compassionate towards each other.
Yeah, there's this approach. Fool me once, that's on you, but fool me twice, and that's already on me, right? So kind
Yeah.
of like giving a bit of credit to the people.
And to give a really nice example, like those 4 years ago when things happened on our behind our eastern border, right? A lot of people had their life completely turned upside down,
Yeah.
and some of the people who were rushing to the border and so on. Within the team, within the project team, we agreed with also with the client and so on. We had basically a day where a couple of people from our team just rushed to the border, like 700 kilometers away, and helped to transport people, their family outside. Right, one of the team members' family with 3 kids, and that was the kind of team building effort and compassion that was later a good memory and a good bonding experience as well.
Yeah, I think in general, I was one of the people who actually rushed to the border, partially because of my own personal reasons. But I remember the overall movement of the society. I think that was really heartwarming to see that, you know, in the hour of need, in the hour of crisis, no matter the background, the beliefs, the political alliances, we unified as a nation just to show support and help, people in dire need of assistance, right?
If I may, Jan, I
Sure.
do want to do a shout out to our organization because it was truly amazing to see EPAMers from around the world just come together and say, what do you need? What do you need me to do? And I think there was so much compassion. If we think about it in its, Webster Dictionary definition, there was so much compassion around the world. People, not even in the region, how can I help? What do you need me to do? How can I help from across the ocean? And I do want to do a call out because it's rare to see organizations with that much compassion and support and empathy for our colleagues. So that I'm not doing that for a promotion or a raise. It was truly an emotional moment, I think, for a lot of EPAMers if we reflect on how we came together and helped our colleagues.
I remember we were with Szymon, we were taking part in actually preparing our office space into temporary shelter for people who were just, coming in. And a lot of offices in Poland, because we are border to border with our colleagues in Ukraine, a lot of offices were doing the same thing, preparing, removing the desks, replacing them with mattresses, sleeping bags, food provisions, basic toiletries. So I think really the effort from the company, but also from the people who divided their own time as well to help and to assist. I think that really goes a long way. So big shout out to everyone who got involved, and big heart from us here to everyone. But as we are approaching the end of our today's episode, let me once again for a moment share the screen with the Menti. So if you go to menti.com and type in the code 54236848, or I will also share the link to that in the Q&A section. You'll be more than welcome to actually participate and to provide the voting for the next episode. So we are more than happy to hear from you what type of topic you would like to see us covering in the episode 21. And also JoAnn, Szymon, Ted, you can also vote if you would like to. You already did? Okay, cool. Happy to see. We already see who's that one dot is. But the last question which I have for you while we wait for the votes to appear on the list is actually, can you give some kind of advice how professionals can show the compassion in the day-to-day work activities without actually overstepping the boundaries to respect the boundaries of the people who actually have this a certain need? So Joanna, maybe as you were the first one to introduce yourself in our session, You can start with answering.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if I could put on my HR hat for a moment, I think this is a fine line, right? Because if we're in the workplace and we're showing compassion, people may divulge things to you that are personal, medical, or any of those things. And I think, being open with people, saying, especially depending on what role you play in the organization, saying, I'm here for you. You don't need to divulge like certain details unless you feel comfortable. And kind of setting those boundaries around the conversation, I think is super helpful. And I know I'm putting on my HR risk hat, like, don't tell me certain things. But certainly, being open around what those boundaries are and then having the open and honest conversation from there.
Thank you so much. Szymon, your advice on not overstepping the boundaries?
I would say this is the part of the ongoing contract that you have with each other, right? When you cooperate with people, it's not a science like with a blood or something, but it's understanding of what are the topics that you both are comfortable talking to each other, and which are the topics like perhaps you just need to listen on to understand that someone is going through some difficult phase in their own life, and just be there. Okay, got it. I see you, and let them be off a little bit with their own selves and so on. And other people require more frequent discussion, more like solutioning, like part of activity as well. But those are things that should come out naturally and not by prodding them too often, like like cattle prod, like, do you need this? Do you need this? Do you need this? No, it needs to come off naturally, and then that way you can build that connection and understanding and set the proper boundary without overstepping someone's comfortable space.
Yeah, I think also this active listening that was mentioned before as well, right? Can be very helpful to not only hear what people are saying, but the words in between the lines kind of also can help identify those. Ted, your input on this?
Yeah, well, I guess just to sort of bookend things, don't be a jerk. Again, it sounds so simple, and I don't mean for it to sound pithy, but it's a great way to be able to express compassion while still respecting boundaries. And I thought both, my co-panelists shared some great approaches to how you can extend compassion without taking agency away from the person who is coming to you or who you're interacting with. But yeah, just don't be a jerk. It's so simple.
But what I see, what will not be simple, is actually selecting the topic for episode 21, because in the voting, we actually have a tie. That there is actually tie between self-awareness and teamwork, which is 80% of votes, and 33% for influence and ethics. So maybe just by elimination, we'll just take the topic of inclusion, right? So that might be an approach to pick up, but definitely we'll consider your voting in this. Thank you to everyone who cast a vote in our pool for selecting the topic for the next episode. And also a very big thank you for joining us here today. Big thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights. And it seems like, it's just really a very important, very interesting skill, because it seems that compassion is not separate from technology. It's actually the essential part of it, because behind, like I mentioned at the beginning, every part of the IT environment, there are people who are performing the work. So human element, in my opinion, still remains the core meaningful innovation aspect of day-to-day work. So that's why let's build the world and let's build an environment in which compassion is not identified as a weakness, and like the theme of this episode, don't be a jerk. So, JoAnn, Szymon, Ted, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your answers, and I do hope to speak to you again in the upcoming episodes of the Let's Ask Expert Edition.
Thank you, Jan. This was great.
Thank you for having us. Yep.
Thank you for having
Cheers.
us.
Bye.
Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.